we are crossing the Nerdverse here with our first rift in the Nerdverse.
So for those of you that are unaware, a Rift in the Nerdverse is a breaking news segment, something where we have come into contact of new information that we feel needs to be shared immediately, and we are going to be throwing it your way. And so, fortunately for us, the person that detected this particular rift is Eric. I'm going to throw it over to him. Eric, what did we find in the Nerdverse today?
Okay, so it's not technically today, but it is very recent. DCU has come out with a lot of new info. So as everybody knows, DC is about 20 steps behind Marvel when it comes to live action movies. It's just, it is what it is. DC is just not up to snuff when it comes to any sort of live action stuff. Now their cartoons are better. I think we can all agree. And their comics are on par with Marvel. So really where DC is losing its audience is going to be in the actual live action portion of everything. So James Gunn has taken over DCU. Now, if you guys don't know him, he's the guy that did Guardians of the Galaxy and stuff like that. He's done a couple different things. So he's not new to the comic world at all. And he's very up to date as to what Marvel was doing and what they've done and what they will do. I would imagine he was in on meetings as to where they're going to go, because at the time they probably didn't realize he was going to take over the DC universe. Now, a nice thing that he has said is that it's going to be a multiverse, sort of like Marvel. So even though Henry Cavill and Batfleck and all these things aren't going to be around anymore, it is still considered part of their multiverse. So he is not completely getting rid of them. Now I would imagine he's not going to be able to get them again to do anything, because he's going to be focused on trying to start up the DCU the way he wants to do it. Now, one thing I've said from the beginning, if you've ever listened to anything Heroes in the Nerdverse before, our brand new show that is exponentially better than my old show, I won't lie. I've always said the Flash movie is going to be the starting point for the new DCU world. I've never, ever not stated that, because the Flash is a character that can restart anything because he can run through time. So one thing with him is, I guess with his run through time, he is going to somehow reset the DCU. Now, the only thing that is concerning me at this moment with that is somehow Aquaman 2, which technically should be in the other multiverse, takes place after Flash's movie. Now, I could be wrong in that, but everything I've read so far states that that's the order that they're released and what is going to happen. Now, the only thing that confuses me is I don't understand how you keep Aquaman with Momoa, amazing actor, by the way. He literally made me respect Aquaman again. How you keep him and do his movie and tied into the new DCU that's coming up. So that's going to be very interesting to me, and that's going to be the fine point of where we see the universe go for DC. What's up, Travis? I see you mumbling.
Yeah, so wasn't Gods and Monsters the new Shazam title? That's supposed to be the first one in their iteration for the new DCU, like, expanded universe that they're doing, if I remember reading that correctly.
Now, see, if I'm not mistaken, Gods and Monsters isn't the title of the Shazam. I think it's the title of the first arc. So you know how, like, Marvel did arcs, so like phase 1, phase 2, and things like that. So the first phase for the DCU is going to be the Gods and Monsters. And that Shazam movie, by the way, actually looks like fire. So I'm excited to see it. But yeah, no, dude, DCU. If James Gunn continues that course of action, that's good, because the nice thing for him is Shazam never incorporated with the current Justice League or any of the characters, so he can keep Shazam in his new universe and continue that going. That's not going to be an issue for him. But yeah, no, Aquaman 2 is after Flash. So that's what I'm saying. Like, that's a really interesting point for me, because I don't understand, if you're not going to tie Aquaman into it, why not release it before Flash? Why release it after Flash? Like, it just, none of that makes any sense to me. It's going to be very interesting to see what they do just in the very beginning, and then as they move on.
So we're looking at the Flash movie, just as you predicted, like you said, coming in and heralding a new arc in the DC universe. But we already have several movies that have been announced. We have Superman Legacy. We have The Brave and the Bold, Swamp Thing, one I'm personally ecstatic about. So excited for Swamp Thing. We have Supergirl, Woman of Tomorrow, and we have The Authority. How does all this tie into that? Do we have any news on that front?
So the big thing I've heard is they're not doing a lot of origins anymore. So all of those are going to be the new universe. So like the first one that I've read that they're focusing on is going to be Superman, which makes sense because other than Batman, Superman is the next step for DC. Batman's a lot easier. Unfortunately, I hate saying this because he's my favorite, but he's a lot easier to replace than Superman. When you look at Batman, they've never truly picked a bad Batman. Like, Batman is hard to kind of mess up. Val Kilmer made me very upset because he was blonde, but at the end of the day, he still portrayed a decent Bruce Wayne in Batman. Even Clooney, George Clooney, the absolute best Bruce Wayne out of any of them, in my opinion, was Clooney. He did. I mean, he was just in a bad movie. Not a great Batman because he probably didn't do any of the other stuff in the suit, and he had nipples. That was weird.
Yeah,
so like
was a big fan
Batman's
of the bat nipples.
right. So Batman's a lot easier to replace. Superman to me is, and it's smart to start with that, because if you want your universe to succeed, it has to be with that character. Because Brandon Routh, while good, was not Superman to me. Like, he just wasn't. When he made that movie, the story was good, I thought, but he lacked in the, like, he didn't make me believe that he was Superman. Henry Cavill did it. He was really good. He was great to take the mantle. There hasn't been a lot of Supermans either, like Batman's. So doing that's going to be important. And Legacy is going to be more about Superman dealing with being an alien and being a human at the same time. Like, it's going to be, it's not an origin story, which is good to see. It's going to be more of later on. And the same with The Brave and the Bold. That's going to be with Damian Wayne, which is Bruce Wayne's son, which means that's 4 Robins in. You're already going to have Dick Grayson, Jason Todd, and the third Batman. Sorry, or third Robin. Sorry, I don't remember your name. I really can't at the moment. But so you're already going to have those 3 that have played the Robin role, and you're going to be on Damian Wayne. So it's that's kind of interesting because they're jumping so far ahead with Batman too. And then Swamp Thing will be an origin story, which makes sense because it hasn't been done in a long time. And then Drake. I don't know. Tim Drake, yes. He actually becomes Robin, like just straight up Robin after he is the Robin for Batman. He wears a weird Robin getup. Anyways, getting off topic. And then I've not read much on Supergirl itself. I would imagine it's probably an origin story because, again, just like Swamp Thing, Supergirl is not something that DC has touched on a lot. I mean, obviously more than Swamp Thing, because they did the TV show. So I haven't read too much on that. So it's going to be interesting to see what they do.
Okay, so if we're talking about the construction of a cinematic universe on par with other major industries, looking at Marvel, for example, they've expanded out and they have a multimedia cooperation with their storyline. And we did get a lot of new DC television shows that were announced. We're talking about Waller, we're talking about Lanterns, we're talking about Creature Commandos, Booster Gold, and Paradise Lost. Do we have any inclination on how any of these are going to tie in to this potential universe reset?
So by the sounds of it, Peacemaker is going to make the new content, which is interesting because he was in Suicide Squad and stuff like that. And then Ben Affleck's Batman kind of made a bit of a small appearance in the original Suicide Squad. So I'm generally interested as to how they're going to incorporate Waller into the new universe. Maybe they're just hoping people don't pay attention, which is crazy to me because comic people pay attention to everything. But Waller's supposed to, from what I read, take place between season 1 and 2 of Peacemaker. So we'll see what happens with that. That'll be interesting. I don't know how they're going to make it gel, but it'll be I'm curious. And then Lanterns has Hal Jordan and I think it's Jon Stewart are both going to be in it, which is weird because as far as I know, most of the time they're not together in the comics. One is after the other usually. And it's going to be more of a detective show, which is cool because that's what the Green Lanterns are. They are detectives. They fight crime in that sense, sort of like a Batman-ish type thing.
So cosmic Batman.
Yeah, basically. So that'll be cool to see. Creature Commandos, Booster Gold, and Paradise Lost I haven't read too much on yet. Booster Gold, I would imagine that's going to be some sort of weird comedy just because of the type of character that is.
Booster Gold is going to be a whole different experience. If they try to stay true to the comic form at all, Booster Gold is going to be an entirely different kind of thing. And you look at Marvel, and you're looking at Miss Marvel, you're looking at Loki, you're looking at WandaVision. They did all of these as tie-ins to try to strengthen their movieverse. Do you think DC might be trying to create something a little bit different, something more TV-centric? They've seen a lot of success in Green Arrow and other similar TV shows, The Flash as a primary example. Maybe they're looking to tackle that screen a little bit more.
I really don't foresee them tying in their TV shows quite as much as their movies or media moving forward, I should say, because you don't see Green Arrow showing up in the films. You obviously don't see the main character from the Flash TV show making appearances in any of the DCU movies that have been coming out. They obviously cast Ezra Miller for their movie title for the Flash as well as the Justice League movie. So it'll be interesting to see what happens moving forward. As it sits right now, I really don't see them incorporating a whole lot of their existing TV shows into their expanded universe as it sits in the moment.
Other than Peacemaker, I'm not tracking any other shows that are going to be incorporated, like Teen Titans, Doom Patrol. I don't see any of those being incorporated. They're both being done with. They're not. Oh, I don't want to say canceled, but they're being sort of completed. Is possibly the better word. So that's interesting to me. And then I think casting is going to play the biggest role in this because if you look at Marvel, I've said it before and I'll always say it. Other than Scarlett Johansson, Marvel picked a lot of actors that were on the down part of their career. Evans wasn't making a lot of movies at the time that were mainstream, and I'm pretty sure even in interviews he stated he was thinking about being done with it. Robert Downey Jr. was on the downside of his career before he made Iron Man.
Paul
there's
Bettany.
A lot of people. Yes, I mean, other than
to me, that's the biggest one out of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Paul Bettany was the one that really revitalized him to the point where I believe he and his agent, before he got the call to be the voice of Jarvis and then eventually Vision, he and his agent were talking about like, hey, maybe it's time to just hang up the hat. So
and even with Elizabeth Olsen, she had something that could have been easily a throwaway role in her first appearance when she came in next to Quicksilver as Scarlet Witch, and now her character's turned into one of the flag bearers for the entire franchise. And so I think I agree with you. I think I agree with your assessment. And I think that's been the downfall of a lot of the DC stuff is they spend too much time on existing high-end talent, and they're not composing themselves to create a new universe. I think the Flash reset that you've been talking about, that James Gunn is getting ready to do, could really open the doors for them to do something really, really interesting in the universe. And for me, with them bringing up Swamp Thing, I can't get over that. I'm giddy about Swamp Thing. I'm so excited, and I really hope they crush it.
Give me a Solomon Grundy movie. Or at least an appearance as a villain somewhere. I love Solomon
Grundy. He was in Supergirl. Or not Supergirl. He was in... oh, man, I can't think of the show. There was a show, though, that came out. Stargirl, I think it is. Yeah, Stargirl. He was in that.
Really?
Yeah, it's a real low-key show. A lot of people didn't.
I'm going to have to check that one out. Solomon Grundy coming out like...
I loved him in the comics. He was just one of my favorites. Solomon Grundy in the comics, obviously one of my favorite villains of all time from DC.
But if you look, the nice thing with James Gunn, the way he's doing it, like you see like the Swamp Thing, the Authority, Creature Commandos, Paradise Lost, even Booster Gold. So he is going to hit a lot of the points that people don't naturally see with DC, which is something Marvel did, because regardless of what people want to think, the Falcon wasn't as mainstream until they made the movies. The Winter Soldier definitely wasn't as mainstream until they made the movies. So they have developed, like Ant-Man was kind of a throwaway character himself until they made the movies. Like Marvel really took the time like to build a universe. And I think James Gunn, with his cheesy smile in all his pictures, has learned that like that's what you need to do. You need to not just have the mainstream like Batman, Superman. You need to get these other characters that nobody really knows about to kind of fill in and do something with it. Now, again, I want to see who they bring in. I haven't really seen too many names yet, but who they bring in to me will be pivotal, because Cavill was good, but you knew he wouldn't stay. I mean, he said he wanted to, but realistically, how many more would he have made? Ben Affleck, how many more would he have made even if Snyder would have stayed? Gal Gadot, how many more?
How many could they have afforded with Batfleck? I mean, that's a love him or hate him, high caliber actor, also a fantastic writer. He's going to come at a premium. It's one of those things where if you're going to have an expanded universe where it's going to be, one after the other, you got to kind of start bringing those people in at that lower benchmark price-wise for an actor, and then build up. If you start at a top tier and then see success, you're going to have to keep upping it to keep them interested, obviously, because it's a competitive market. You're bidding for people's time in that regard. So if you start off with those really high caliber, very expensive actors, keeping them engaged for it either needs to be a passion project for them to where they're just absolutely in love with the character, or you're going to have to bid heavy for their time, and that always gets expensive.
Well, and more so than that, I think that they're really looking at what the other industries have done, and they're starting to realize that the origin stories are good sellers when you're not repeating them. We don't need to see Bruce Wayne's parents die again. Same as we don't need to see Uncle Ben die in Spider-Man again. A lot of these main characters already have their origin story well defined. Even people that are not in the Nerdverse understand what a radioactive spider bite is, understand where Batman came from. And that's where I think we're getting a lot of these new characters. Nobody knows where Swamp Thing came from or what the Verd is. Nobody knows anything about Booster Gold. And so if they're going to do origin stories, they need to do it like Marvel did with Miss Marvel and Captain Marvel and even Ant-Man to a certain extent, where they are going to take these fan favorites from the comic books and either tell their origin story or create a new origin story, as was the case with Ant-Man. And I think that taking some of these really fan-loved characters like Swamp Thing, like Booster Gold, is going to let them do that. They can tell an origin story that hasn't been told to death.
I'm pretty sure Swamp Thing just came from the swamp. Like, I'm not super versed in that particular character, Ryan, but I think that origin story is already out there. Swamp Thing, Swamp, I'm sensing some connection.
You know, I got stacks of comics over here. We're about to have an education on the Verd and what that means.
But yeah, so it's nice to see DC's doing things a little bit different, but they are following the Marvel footstep. Hopefully they do it with the characters, with the actors they hire, I should say, to play the characters. I'm hoping they do it. I think part of the failure of the last Snyderverse, I get it. Some people loved it. I was not a fan of it. Batman versus Superman to me was, and then if you look at like Justice League, the movie, now when they did the extended release, it was a little bit better, but it was still a little too long. So I'm really hoping they get some no names, some low budget, some nobodies to come in and really develop themselves as actors and actresses to play these characters and kind of fill it out and give us something new. And then if they don't, they just do the same typical thing that DC always does and just hires a bunch of big name actors that they're going to have to spend way too much money on, especially after they saw how much Robert Downey Jr. got for playing Iron Man in Iron Man 3 and in all the Avengers movies. I mean, then they'll pay the price. All right, so with this rift, it is not meant to be exceptionally long. So what I want to do is I want to send it to Ryan and Travis one more time each to get their last comments in on this. All right, Ryan, go.
All right, guys. So same as always, if you listen to the podcast, I'm going to say the same thing now that I say then. Please, we want to hear from you. What do you think about this big announcement with James Gunn and the DC Cinematic Universe and the upcoming projects? You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook. You can find us on everything. We're everywhere. You can get a hold of us. Let us know what you think. We would love to talk about it on the show.
All right, Travis.
Final thing with DCU, I gotta say, I'm hoping for the best of it. I love their content. I love their comics. I would like to see them start creating a successful movie franchise on the back of it. And with that, we are crossing the Nerdverse. This has been our rift in the Nerdverse, and we will catch you next time. Thanks for joining us.